This is eutrophication in a nutshell. Here we have a river, some fields or crops next to the river, fish in the river, and some algae plants in the river dotted about, which the fish are feeding on. First thing that might happen is that a farmer might add some fertiliser to the crops to make them grow more. Fertilisers contain things like nitrates and phosphates, and this is what makes your crops grow. Nitrates and phosphates are taken in by the plants and used to grow. So the farmer has added some fertiliser. Heavy rain has caused some of the fertiliser to be washed into the river. So some of the nitrates and phosphates from the fertiliser has been washed or leached. I'll write that word. Leached into the river. The first thing that happens upon leaching is that because the nitrates and phosphates have gone into the river, the algae and plants that we saw here dotted about undergo a process called algal bloom. And that means that because of the nitrates and phosphates, basically the algae grow like mad. So here we can see the algae concentration is much higher than it was at the start because of the nitrates and phosphates from the fertiliser. So what this does is, because you've got a very dense covering now of algae, the sun is blocked from reaching the lower levels of the river. Because the sunlight can't reach some of the algae, it dies. It needs sunlight to undergo photosynthesis. Without sunlight, it can't get any food for itself, so it dies. So these plants then sink to the bottom of the river. Bacteria come along and start to eat and break down the dead stuff on the bottom of the river. In order for the bacteria to do this, it needs oxygen to undergo the process of respiration. So the process of respiration is sugar plus oxygen produces carbon dioxide and water. So the bacteria are taking up loads of oxygen to give themselves energy to break down the dead and decaying matter that's now on the bottom. By taking all this oxygen, the fish are left with very little. So what happens is that. So there's the whole process. Go through it dead quickly one more time. Fertiliser is added to the crops. Rainfall leaches nitrates and phosphates from the fertiliser into the river. Algal bloom takes place. The sun is blocked. Algae at the lower level dies and sinks to the bottom. Bacteria feed on the dead algae, and in doing so use up loads of oxygen. That means there's less oxygen for animals and the fish in the river in particular. And so the fish die. And that is eutrophication in a nutshell. That whole thing to explain probably took me about 3 minutes. If you listen to this over and over half term for revision, 3 minutes is all it'll take to go over the whole process of eutrophication. And examiners love this in exams. It's a higher level question. So this is how you're going to access top marks.